all right. So I said, well, then. Actually, what we're going to do now is I'm going to recite the Lord's Prayer. So I recited the Lord's Prayer, pronounced the man and wife, got in my car, drove back, and said, like, I can't even do a wedding right. People don't even follow me at a wedding anymore. So, I'm kind of in a bad mood after that whole thing. And I get up the next morning, and really I was having a little leadership confidence issue. And you think I'm making this up, but I got my journal out. My journal's very important to me. When I talk with God, when I try to chronicle the activity of God in my life, most of the time I do that by just writing about it and processing in my journal. And so I said, God, I'm frustrated. I'm in a slump. I've got problems I can't solve. The church needs these issues solved. I've brought bright people around. I'm not trying to do it all alone, but we're stumped. And actually, I wonder if I know anything anymore, So the Spirit started speaking back to me, and I'm going to talk to you more about that in a minute. It was God planting some thoughts in my mind. He's like, Bill, you know some things. It's not like you know nothing. You've been leading for 3.5 decades. You know some things. And I was like, good, remind me of one. And so this is what came to mind. Kind of a fundamental of leadership. And the idea is leaders move people from here to there. Oh, was I glad that I knew that. Leaders move people from here to there. I wrote that down just like that in my journal. Now, this much I know about leadership. You must be able, if you're a leader, you must be able to stand in front of a group of 3 or 30 or 300 or 30,000, whatever number of people you lead. But you have to be able to say, gang, we are here, current reality, but someday by God's grace, if we link arms, if we focus and sacrifice, if we work and persevere, we are going to wind up there. This preferred future. And we will all love life when we get there. The world will be a better place. Our organization will be stronger. Our church will be more like Acts chapter 2 churches. But I was writing in my journal that day and I said, this much I know. Leaders move people from here to there. Now, the advanced among us right now are saying, Bill, you're just talking about the vision thing. You're just talking about the need to stand in front of people and paint a picture of the future that produces passion in people. You do that and off you go, right? How tough is that? In recent years, I've learned it's a little tougher than I really thought it was over the years. In fact, I used to think that the very first step in moving people from here to there was simply describing how wonderful life would be if we were all there. I would cast as hot a vision as I could about what being there would look like, taste like, feel like, smell like. I'd walk off this very stage. If it went well, spike my Bible over there. Expect the board and the staff to carry me on their shoulders out in the parking lot. But then, almost every time, within 24 hours of the best vision casting I could do, I would get an alarming number of emails from good people, who would say in so many words, hey, Bill, we like it here. There, schmear. We're not going to budge. It's familiar here. It's safe here. We're used to it here. We're staying here. Now, has that ever happened to anybody other than me? Okay, well, what do you do when people say, I'm staying here? Well, I do what most of us do. I crank up the heat of the vision another 500 degrees. I stand up the following week and say, hey, last week I said that life would be wonderful when we get there. I undersold it. It's going to be fantastic when we get there. Paradise, bliss on a stick when we get there. And then the next day, the emails would roll in. Nope, we're staying here. I've learned something in the last 18 to 24 months about moving people from here to there. The first play is not to make there sound wonderful. The first play is to make here sound awful. Now take a deep breath. This is really profound. For you slow learners, the first play is not to describe how wonderful there is. It's to describe how awful it would be to stay here. I cast that vision, and several times during it, people broke into applause, and they were like, yes, yes, we cannot stay here for the reasons you mentioned. And we can see clearly the day when we could be there. But this is really important, gang. Does this make sense to you? Because this is really important when it comes to vision casting. Now, thank you for that smattering. Long before, it's only the advanced that get this stuff. Yeah. And you fail the humility test. Think about this a little bit historically. Long before Dr. Martin Luther King, the great civil rights leader in the United States, long before he gave his famous "I Have a Dream" speech, he gave hundreds of other speeches that could have been entitled "We Can't Stay Here" speeches. Hundreds of times he stood in front of groups of people and he said, there's too much injustice for us to stay here. There's too much suffering, too much indignity, too much prejudice. In the letter he wrote from the Birmingham jail, he said, we have been here stuck in racial prejudice. We have been here for 340 years. White people still call us boy or nigger. Our women are disrespected. Our children live in fear. Dr. Martin Luther King was just building the case. We cannot stay here. And then one day, he turned the corner and he gave the speech, but I have a dream. And he described where there was, where people are not judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character, and on he went. People were ready for the there speech because they had heard several "we can't stay here" speeches. Remember Bob Pierce, who was the founder of World Vision. And that's an organization, worldwide organization, that feeds starving children in the name of Christ. And Bob Pierce used to take donors, wealthy people from the Western world, and take them over to underdeveloped countries. And he would have them stand in the food lines with all these little kids who were starving to death. And he would, again, just position the people, these donors, right in the food line. And then he would wait, and inevitably the food would run out at a certain point. And then these kids some would faint and fall over, some would go back home crying and all that. And Bob Pierce used to just say to the donors, we can't stay here. This is unconscionable. And then he would say, but with your help, with the activity of God, we can go there where we can feed millions of starving children if we could go there. Remember his famous line. He says, we must let our hearts be broken by what breaks the heart of God. What was he really saying? Staying here breaks the heart of God.